you, and I believe Angela has given Anastasia the co-host rights. So when you're ready, Anastasia.
Awesome, thank you. Let me just share my screen really quick. Okay, everyone can see that, right? I'm hoping. Okay.
I can see.
Okay, awesome. All right, hello everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to talk about mental health advocacy and digital wellness. These are seriously two of my favorite topics to talk about, so I'm really excited to get started with that. Yeah, let's start. So first of all, hello, my name is Anastasia Vlasova. I live in the Washington, D.C. area. I'm currently a high school senior. Very grateful to have been doing this project with NAMI because it's certainly adding a little bit of excitement to the mundanity of second semester senior year. So thank you for having me here. I'll be attending NYU in the fall, and I'm the creative director of This Is My Brave Teens, which is a mental health advocacy and storytelling platform located on Instagram. And I'm the host of Brave Wave, which is an upcoming mental health podcast that's being done in collaboration with This Is My Brave and Principal Pictures. So stay tuned for that. And if you'd like to check out This Is My Brave Teens, the handle is right there at the bottom, and it'll also be on the last slide if you guys want to check that out then as well. So the two topics that we're covering today are going to be mental health advocacy through social media and digital wellness. So I'm going to talk all about how you can utilize your voice to bring awareness to mental health and mental illness, normalize the conversation around it, and also digital wellness, which is a topic that I've recently been getting into over the past few months. And basically I'll be talking about how to develop a positive, healthy relationship with tech, especially when you're in the social media advocacy space, because it's really important to establish those boundaries. So first of all, mental health awareness advocacy. Why should you get into it? Why should you be interested in this? Well, first, it helps normalize conversation about mental health, right? Because as soon as one person starts sharing their story, it oftentimes influences and inspires another person to do the same. And therefore, it turns into this domino effect where one person is sharing a story, then another, and soon mental health, mental illness becomes super normal, commonplace conversation topics, which also helps positively influence policymakers. So if you're a young person out there who's really interested in the public policy, political side of mental health advocacy, I personally am not super into that. However, if you are, social media advocacy is still a very effective way of getting the attention of your local authority, and you can work with them to change curriculums within high schools or middle schools or even elementary schools to make them more inclusive of mental health related topics and other policy work if you're interested in that. So what exactly is mental health awareness advocacy? Well, to me, I think that it encompasses these two things, which are embracing vulnerability and encouraging others to share their stories. Like I said before, mental health advocacy is this domino effect. So one person shares their story, which inspires another person to share theirs. Therefore, it's just encouraging storytelling all around. And also, mental health awareness advocacy requires a lot of vulnerability and self-acceptance because it's a very emotional and personal topic and can sometimes be even a little bit triggering. So it's really important and critical for mental health advocates to embrace vulnerability and to kind of accept all parts of their stories that have been shamed for so long by society. And lastly, I want to answer the question of how you can advocate for mental health awareness. Well, obviously today's focus is social media, so I'm going to be talking all about how you can share your story through social platforms like Instagram. And the reason that I wanted to hone in on Instagram is actually because Instagram is the only social media platform that I use, which I'll get into later in the digital wellness portion of this presentation. I'm not a huge fan of TikTok or other social media platforms just because I get a little bit too addicted to them. And so I try to just stay away from them as much as possible. And plus Instagram is kind of this one-stop shop because it has so many different channels through which you can upload content. For example, it's got the main feed, it's got the Reels, IGTV, Stories, Instagram Live. So everything is there in one single app. So for the main feed, you can feature personal stories. I've personally found that when I share stories from my personal experience with mental illness, such as anxiety, depression, or binge eating disorder, a lot of people respond really positively to that. And I personally think it's because a lot of people, when they stumble across an Instagram account, they like to feel as if they can relate to that account or to whoever is running that account, right? And so when you include more personal details in your advocacy work, you're more likely to appeal to a wider audience just because it adds credibility and relatability to your work. You can also use your main feed to include empowering quotes or illustrations, resources or tips and guides. And I do want to highlight the fact that if you want to include a lot of resources and tips and guides with scientific information or like diagnosis related information, be sure to do thorough research regarding those topics from reputable, accurate, up-to-date sources, just because there's a lot of health related misinformation already on social media. So we don't want to add to that. Yeah, and so for reels are perfect for if you're someone who, for example, loves TikTok and you kind of want to kill two birds with one stone and make a TikTok and also upload it to reels. You can do tips, how-tos, symptoms of, which again, as you can see below, make sure to gather that information from reputable sources. Don't want to be contributing to the already existent health-related misinformation. You can also use reels to show your different routines. For example, maybe your calming night routine or your grounding morning routine or stress alleviating routines. Another thing that I love to use my account for is Blank Awareness Day, which is kind of like mental health holidays, I guess, but I just like to call them awareness days because they're not quite holidays. But if you look on websites such as mentalhealthamerica.org or any other mental health organization's website, you'll often find that they have a calendar of different mental health related awareness days. For example, like Stress Awareness Week, Mental Health Awareness Month, Bipolar Disorder Day. And I think those days are great for creating content because it educates people, it's informative, and again, it spreads awareness around the topic of mental health. And then moving on to IGTV, which I've actually kind of recently turned to. I personally love using IGTV for uploading interviews that I conduct through IG Lives. So basically, IGTV interviews require little to no editing, super quick and easy if you're kind of already a super busy person and you have a lot of like extracurriculars on your plate and stuff. IGTV is a great way to just upload videos quickly with like minimal work. I don't want to say minimal effort because obviously you're putting effort into it, but it doesn't require as much editing as like a YouTube video would. You can also use IGTV to post personal stories, kind of like YouTube sit-down style videos to share details about your personal experiences with mental illness, mental health struggles, or just things that you've found that help your mental health. You can also, if you're someone who's musically gifted, you can upload songs or other like pieces that you've created with your musical instruments that are kind of related to mental health and expressing your mental health story. Being a part of This Is My Brave, I have a lot of people who are into like the performance arts and singing and like creative writing and poetry and everything. And I found that people who like to utilize those mediums to convey their mental health and mental illness stories always yield a really positive effect because people really gravitate towards music. It's super emotional. It touches a lot of people and it resonates with a lot of people. So that's a great way to highlight your talents and your story. You can also, if you're into filmmaking, you can create like documentary style videos or sit down videos or interviews. Just really make it your own. I mean, Instagram is very liberating because it offers like so many different ways to showcase your talents and allows you to explore all of these different interests that you have. So just find whatever channel works for you and use that. And lastly, I want to talk about stories and lives, which are kind of like the temporary aspect of your Instagram account because they usually disappear after 24 hours. So for stories, you can always repost other organizations or individuals' content. So that's a great way to give other mental health advocates exposure and also share with your audience the type of content that resonates with you and inspires you and everything and kind of shows your vibe, I guess. And you can also do a lot of cool interviews on IG Lives because a lot of these mental health advocates are on social media. So you can reach out to them through DM or through email or whatever and ask if you could perhaps do an interview with them about a certain mental health topic. For example, I did one with @MeetBrit, if you guys know her by her Instagram name, a few days ago about mindfulness and just different topics about mental health and self-confidence and everything. And that was super fun. And then I just uploaded that to IGTV. And also you can do like Q&As. And if you're someone who wants to remain a bit more anonymous on your Instagram account, you can always just do like sticker Q&As instead of like doing live video Q&As where you show your face if you choose to remain more anonymous. And yes, there's plenty of ways to basically showcase your mental health advocacy work on Instagram. And now I want to move on and talk about how you can share your story mindfully and safely, because Mental health, as I said before, it's a very sensitive, personal, and emotional topic. So it's super important to make sure that you're sharing your story in a way that's conscious of also your audience members' feelings, because a lot of people who access these mental health accounts are also kind of going through something on their own. So you want to make sure that you're being mindful and empathetic towards them. So one thing that I always keep in mind when I'm doing my work or sharing my story is to use I statements. So I share from my personal experience rather than assume that all of my audience members experience everything as I do. Because you got to remember, mental health is a very individual experience. So something that might work for you won't necessarily work for someone else. And you want to speak from personal experience because you don't want your audience members to feel as if you're telling them to do this and that only that will work and help them with whatever mental health struggle that they're experiencing. So yeah, it's really important to be mindful of that. And secondly, I love to convey hope in all of my posts and my messages and my captions and everything. I just like to infiltrate all of my content with hope and optimism. And I'm in no way promoting positive psychology, because I think that it's important to acknowledge the more uncomfortable, dark, negative, whatever you want to call them, feelings that you experience. I don't think you should sugarcoat things. However, I do like to keep in mind that a lot of these people who are accessing my account are looking for uplifting, empowering, inspiring content to remind them that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. As cheesy as that quote is, I mean, it's true, right? You want to remind them that there's better days ahead, even if they're going through like the worst point in their life right now. It's okay, because there's more good to come. And so that's why I really like to end my messages on a high note, or just like with a tip or suggestion for improvement. Yeah, I just find that that helps a lot and also makes me feel better too. And then another thing that I want to highlight is authenticity. So advocacy requires practicing transparency and self-acceptance to inspire others to do the same. I think that a huge component of mental health advocacy and of being a successful advocate is to encourage people to be themselves and to embrace their true selves and highlight all of the great qualities that they have, because every single person is enough, every single person is worthy, every single person is already beautiful and amazing and intelligent and inspiring and meant to take up space on this planet. And so I think that by you practicing authenticity as an advocate, that'll encourage other people to do the same, and in the end create a world in which people embrace authenticity and who they are. And lastly, a huge part of mental health advocacy is also checking in with yourself and asking yourself, am I in a mentally stable enough place to be doing this work right now? Because what I found, at least in the beginning of my work, before I kind of started establishing all of these boundaries and stuff and like figuring out my limits, mental health advocacy work can get really exhausting because it takes an emotional toll on you, and you're constantly hearing about other people's stories and experiences, and being in the space, you're often very empathetic, so you really take in people's experiences or like problems, and you feel for people a lot. And so if you don't figure out a way to kind of balance how much you care about other people's issues that are going on or situations, and also your work and everything that you're putting out, it can get very difficult and sometimes will require a break, which is totally okay. And I'll touch on that in the second portion of the digital wellness part. So yeah, just make sure to check in with yourself and say, you know what, maybe today's not a good day. Maybe today is more for healing rather than putting out work into the public. And that's okay. That's all part of being a mental health role model. Okay, and so here is a little sneak peek of the This Is My Brave Teens account. Oh, sorry, I hear someone's volume. Is that okay? Can I keep going? Okay, anyway, so on the left here is a little snapshot of the This Is My Brave Teens main feed. And I just wanted to show you like what it looks like. And if you continue scrolling down, you'll notice that the aesthetic or vibe or like color scheme, whatever you want to call it, changes. And at least some of the people that I've met sometimes get intimidated by the fact that like you have to curate this whole feed that's representative of your creative side, but also like is eye-catching and everything. And that can seem like a very daunting task. But my suggestion is just to do what you want to do, just put out the work that you feel proud of and that you think is substantive and will benefit someone. And eventually you'll find your voice, you'll find your style, and yeah, we'll just learn as you keep going. And then in the middle here is just like an overview of the account. And then on the right is a photo of one of my post that I'm most proud of, because that's the post that I really opened up a lot about my experience with binge eating disorder that I had for 5 years. And you can't really see the caption, which is a bit ironic because the whole reason I'm proud of that post is because of the caption, what I wrote in it. But if you do take a look at it, you'll notice that I talked a lot about my binge eating disorder experience. But you'll also notice that I didn't post about that really until about like 10 months into having the account. And the reason I want to highlight that is to just say that you don't need to express every single detail about your personal life and your mental illness experiences with the world just because you're an advocate. If you don't think that you're in a stable, healthy, recovered enough place to share your story or every part of your story, that's totally fine. I mean, it's about, sure, stepping out of your comfort zone, but not stepping so much out of your comfort zone that you feel as if you're uncomfortable with people knowing this information about you. So it took me a while to get there, but I was eventually, stable enough and in a good enough place in my recovery to open up about my ED. And so that's what I used the This Is My Brave Teens platform for. Okay, so now I want to talk about how to actually find your voice. So I like to treat, first of all, like I'm like a business-minded person, I guess. Like I love reading about different businesses and learning about, learning from my boss, Jennifer Marshall, the co-founder and exec director of This Is My Brave, like about running an organization, a nonprofit. And so I like to treat the Instagram account like a business or like a nonprofit. And each business has a mission, like kind of this ultimate outcome that they want to achieve with their organization, with their work. And so I think that as soon as you identify the mission of your work, you can begin to brainstorm how your content can align with it. And that way you can ensure that each post furthers your mission. So it's a lot easier to create content for something when you have kind of this guiding thing that you're going towards, right? And so as long as you keep your mission in mind every time you're creating a post or uploading an interview or like reposting something, it'll be much easier to kind of curate your feed and find your own unique voice in the mental health space. And secondly, I think that self-acceptance is very important in this work, because eliminating the stigma means accepting every part of your story that society has shamed for so long. And I know that for me, at least in the beginning, that was really tough, especially regarding my eating disorder, because that was something that was still kind of a fresh wound in my mind. And so I was still very ashamed of it, but luckily I got to a place where, I accepted everything that I had gone through, and I accepted the fact that, sure, it shaped my identity, but it in no way defines who I am. And so I think that self-acceptance is something huge that all mental health advocates really invest a lot of time into working on. And lastly, the reason the word numbers is striked out is because I want to emphasize the fact that don't focus so much on the quantifiable aspects of your Instagram account, like the follower count or the amount of likes or the amount of comments or like any other type of audience engagement, just because that can become very distracting to your work and to your creativity. And oftentimes it can result in an unnecessary anxiety or stress and make you feel worse about yourself, when in reality, mental health advocacy is all about finding balance and feeling good and empowering others. And so just remember your mission and passion for a better world, and let that be your guiding force in your work. Okay, and so now I want to talk about simple ways to start your advocacy work. So first, you could start with sharing a personal story. So share how your mental health experiences have impassioned you to help others. Like I said before, oftentimes when you share a bit more personal details on your account, it just adds more relatability and credibility to the work that you're doing. Secondly, if you want to remain more anonymous and just kind of, still participate in advocacy, but you don't want your face to be like the representation of all of the work that you're doing, you could always be something that I call Resource Central, which is just an account that shares research-based educational material about mental illness and mental health, including helpful resources. Again, usually this information is derived from like research-based work. And so just make sure that you're accessing really reputable, accurate, up-to-date research online. Some great resources are NAMI, also mentalhealthamerica.org, and just a bunch of these well-known mental health nonprofit organizations. If you're someone who's very artistically talented and you want to share your story in kind of a non-writing way, you could always share doodles or illustrations or animations that are related to mental health that are meant to empower, uplift, and just make other people happy. And lastly, if you don't really want to start your own account, maybe you're too busy or maybe that's just not your thing, you could always seek partnership with already existent mental health advocate individuals or mental health nonprofits. So you could reach out to a mental health focused nonprofit about being a social media manager or a content creator for them if they have opportunity for that. And here I actually included a little pitch example. I don't know how many teens are listening to this, but if you guys are interested in learning about how you can reach out to an organization, I think this is a pretty simple and effective way of doing so. You can just say, hey, my name is blank. I've been following your organization for a while now and really admire the work you're doing with whatever initiative you're interested in. I'm interested in expanding my mental health advocacy beyond, and then share some previous experience and into the digital world. Are there any social media mental health advocacy opportunities available within your organization? If so, I would love to hop on a call to chat about how I can contribute to the amazing work your organization is doing. So super simple, sweet, and short, and also it ends with a call to action, which I think is important because it demonstrates initiative and kind of calls for the next steps. So yeah, just be confident, try a few organizations. If some of them don't respond, that's okay. Sometimes people just don't have positions for you. Just keep trying. You got it. Okay, so that's kind of it for the first portion about social media. And so what we learned today is that Instagram is an effective method of sharing your uplifting content with a wide audience. It also requires a clear mission, self-acceptance, vulnerability, and initiative, which every single one of us has within us. Just believe in ourselves. And lastly, creativity is the driving force behind its success and is really utilized to differentiate yourself from other people. Okay, so now I want to talk about literally one of my favorite topics that I can just rave on and on about, digital wellness. And so digital wellness is basically practicing healthy tech habits on a daily basis to improve your overall mental and physical health to thrive instead of survive. I got this definition from Half the Story, which I highly recommend checking out. They're a wonderful organization. I love Larissa May, the founder of Half the Story. They're doing some amazing work with tech-life balance, so I highly recommend checking them out. So the whole reason why I seek digital wellness is, first of all, to avoid burnout. I have I used to have a serious problem with kind of spreading myself too thin and like taking on a bunch of responsibilities and constantly being on and like overproductive and working. So seeking digital wellness allows me to establish boundaries and taking screen breaks when necessary to keep me energized and creative, because the second point here is it increases my focus, because minimizing tech usage always minimizes self-comparison to other creators, and instead increases the focus that I have on my own work, because I used to have this tendency to just kind of compare myself to other people online and like all of the work that they're doing and questioning whether what I'm doing is impactful enough or effective or substantive or like creative enough and stuff. But when I'm really not on social media, I can instead just focus on just creating, basically, which is what I love to do and what kind of got me into mental health advocacy in the first place. And lastly, I read the book Digital Minimalism, which I highly recommend for everyone. It's by Cal Newport, who is a computer science professor at Georgetown University. And he talks all about high quality leisure activities, which I love. And they're basically just more fulfilling and what's the word? Sustainable, there we go. Sustainable activities you can incorporate into your daily life to replace the times that you use tech, like reading or taking a walk or just talking to friends, basically. Okay, and so here are some tips for this is how I practice digital wellness. So first of all, I always ask for help if I need it, if I'm feeling too overwhelmed. For the majority of last year and the beginning of this year, I was kind of the only one running the Brave Teens account. And so a couple weeks ago, I asked This Is My Brave intern to help me with doing more of the daily audience engagement work while I focus on back-end artistic elements, which has helped a lot. So I just focus on simply creating the content content and then doing any interviews that I have. But other than that, I stay off of social media. And secondly, I really am adamant about taking social media breaks. So I temporarily disable my personal Instagram account every single month. And I often go on these breaks for longer than a month. So I really only access my personal account probably like once 1 week a month or even fewer than that. So yeah, you can do that through Instagram on your computer. You got to go to the settings to do that. I also delay my phone usage in the mornings. So I try to avoid my screens until 8:15 or at least until my morning routine is complete. So instead of checking my phone as soon as I roll out of bed, I drink water, like journal, make my bed, all of that stuff. It just helps me feel a lot more grounded and just happy and peaceful. And I also like to limit nightly screen usage. So I always put my phone away at least 1 hour before sleep and replace that hour with reading or talking to family members or journaling or stretching, yoga, whatever activity that just doesn't involve technology. And this actually helps alleviate a lot of the anxiety I experience in the mornings because I tend to have a lot of anxiety in the morning. And so when I have a calming tech-less night routine, it just helps me feel better. Another thing I do is I like to focus on the present moment. So I challenge myself to observe my surroundings rather than doom scroll. So I'm sure we can all relate to those situations where like we're in the grocery store line or we're walking from room to room and we have this habit of reaching for our phone, pulling it out, checking the lock screen, the time, our text, Instagram, whatever. I really try to not do that because one, it's kind of pointless. And two, I find that it's much easier for me to get into the negative habit of like doom scrolling if I check my phone unnecessarily. So I try to just look up more often than at my screen. And lastly, like I said before, I try to incorporate as many high quality leisure activities as possible. So I like to replace any doom scrolling or watching with more fulfilling activities like reading, running, really anything else that just doesn't require tech. Okay, so now some tips for how you can practice digital wellness. For one, you can place your phone in a different room when you sleep. I find that this is really, it minimizes distractions, so you're not as tempted to check your phone when you're doing like work or getting ready for sleep. You can also leave your phone at home or in a less accessible place when going outdoors, so you're not tempted to reach at it. Instead, you can just look around at your surroundings and really absorb all of the nature that's around you. You can also play the mindfulness nature game, which is basically just observance. You can identify 5 things that you can see, touch, smell, 5 different colors, 5 different people, whatever, and you can just kind of go down that list and just really absorb everything that's happening around you. And that basically just helps you be more mindful and in the present moment. And another thing you can do is identify 2 to 3 feelings that you experience when scrolling through social media. So doing so just makes you more conscious about the types of feelings that arise when you scroll through social media. For example, are you experiencing a decrease in self-confidence, or are you feeling sad or hopeless or something? And being aware of those emotions just helps you regulate your usage of social media. And another thing you can do is experiment with your social media intake limit, basically see how much time can you spend on social media before you start feeling sad or exhausted or just lazy. And then maybe that'll help encourage you to really regulate the amount of time you spend on social media. And lastly, you can take notice of the stories your brain tells you while scrolling through social media. For example, if you're scrolling past a photo of someone who is a fitness influencer, and all of a sudden your brain starts telling you, you need to go on a diet, or you don't look good enough, or you can't wear that, or she has more of a better life than you. And all of these false things that your brain is telling you, really try to question it when it says those things and say, you know what, are these thoughts really serving me right now? If the answer is no, then perhaps unfollow the person or click X out of the app. So yeah, I find that these things help me a lot, and hopefully they'll help you establish some balance. And lastly, I just wanted to quickly touch on how you can have a successful digital detox, which is basically just not spending time using tech or specifically social media. So you can delete or hide all social media apps from your phone. You can notify your friends and family that you're taking a break rather than just like going off the grid all of a sudden. You should probably let a few of your close family members or friends know that maybe you're taking a break for a little bit. And you can actually set up an automated message through car mode in your Apple settings. And I'm sure that there's other options that you can do for Android phones as well. Just look it up on Google. And basically this will notify people who text you that, you know what, you're away from the screen right now. If it's urgent, call or send an email. And you can also replace any phone usage immediately after waking up or before falling asleep with a more high quality leisure activity. And I'm sure that I said the words high quality leisure activity like 50 times. So I think you know what that is at this point. And lastly, if you run a public Instagram account, like specifically for mental health advocacy, try to notify your audience. I mean, this isn't required, but I think it'd be really cool to let your audience know that, hey, you're setting these boundaries with social media and you're taking this break for your mental health. And I think that sometimes people have this worry of, oh, am I going to experience decreased audience engagement? Am I going to lose followers? Are people not going to be interested in my account? But in reality, I think that you're just going to be setting a positive example, and it'll be really cool of you to do so. Okay, last slide. Just some reminders when you are practicing digital wellness, it gets easier. So I know that especially a lot of people in my generation have quite the phone addiction, especially social media addiction. And so it can be very tough, especially in the beginning, to incorporate all of these breaks and go so long without it. And a day without social media might seem like a year without it. But trust me, the longer that you go without it, the easier it gets. So just keep persevering. And also feel good. Digital wellness is not about eliminating tech usage or feeling bad about using social media in any way. It's simply about learning to regulate tech usage to feel more focused, energetic, and happy, and just good with how you're spending your time. And I believe that's it. Hopefully I didn't go over time, but yeah. So I just wanted to talk to you all about social media, mental health advocacy, digital wellness, and I hope you all got at least something substantive from this presentation. And if you ever wanted to contact me, there's my email and my Instagram handle is below. This is My Brave Teens. And then my LinkedIn is Anastasia Vlasova. There's probably multiple Anastasias, but just search me up and I'm sure you'll find me in one way or another. But yeah, that concludes my presentation. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Anastasia. That was so informative. I got a lot from that, especially the breaks. I know that I'm personally super addicted to my phone, especially like when TikTok came around and there's not so much COVID started, just on loop. So it is super important to take those breaks.
Thank you. Yeah, no, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And then I think I talked with Britt, and we can take maybe like 2 questions if anybody has them. Let me look through. A lot of praise.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I didn't even see the chat. Thank you all so much. That's very kind of you.
Okay. So if there's not any questions, we also put your Instagram handle, this is My Brave Teens, in the chat box. So if anybody wants to follow you or DM you, this is a great way to contact her. And then next up, we will be having Britt her pack. And then I believe we just need to give the rights to Britt now. But Anastasia, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed your presentation. And I am also following you on Instagram, and I just love seeing your content.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you all for having me.
Hey, Sophia, it's Angela. Britt's set to go.
All right, great.